It's all about quality and getting control of the breath and slowing it down. There'll be less thoughts, but there'll be higher quality thoughts that you'll be bringing to your mind's eye.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Today, we're speaking with a master in the science of mindful breathing. I've recently realized that good, correct breathing does not come as automatically as I'd thought. In fact, I'm like most people who come to find we've been doing it wrong for quite some time. Breathing is not just related to stress relief. It has a direct correlation to sleep, back health, weight loss, digestion, memory, depression, and anxiety. Our guest today makes that case and provides insights on how to breathe for health and longevity and not just survival. So please welcome the author and breath expert, Mr. Ed Harrold, to the Escape Your Limits podcast.
In 1995, I was in a 22.5-mile professional swim. And there was 28 people in the race. The water was 58 degrees. It was in the ocean in the bay. There's some really super athletes in this event. The first 8 miles of the event, everything was fine. You know, I had this thing set up in my head, how I wanted this to play out. I visualized it. And the first 8 miles, everything was great. And then around about the 9 mile mark, I couldn't keep anything down. I was in mild hypothermia or hypothermia. I really couldn't control my brain. And between mile 8 and mile 14, I literally just wanted to stop. I couldn't take one more stroke. In fact, my stroke rate went down to like 55 strokes a minute. I was in bad shape. I thought for sure there was no way that I was ever going to complete this 22.5 mile swim. And then around mile 14, something happened inside my body that I can only describe, that I felt this huge warm energy come up from my pelvic bowl, and it moved up my spine into my brain, and I was invincible. And from mile 14 to 22.5, I swam the fastest I ever swam in my life. I was swimming about 90, 100 strokes a minute, and I came in 14th out of 28th. But if you asked me in the middle of that race, was I going to finish that race? There was no way on earth. The last thing I wanted to do was swim anymore. So just keep hanging in there with it and keep pushing yourself. Don't quit. Stay connected to your breath. There's more energy inside us than I could describe to anyone out there. We're like a nuclear power plant, and most of us censor these feelings. We want to bring these feelings up into the brain and light that brain up, light that heart of yours up, because you really are invincible.
Thank you for supporting the Escape Your Limits podcast. If you're thinking about creating a unique and engaging fitness space to take your fitness to the next level, then we have you covered. Escape Fitness design and manufacture some of the most innovative, attractive, and durable functional training and free weight equipment used by many of the best trainers and fitness brands across the globe. As a valued listener, we are offering you a 10% discount off many of the products on our website. You can check out the full range by going to escapefitness.com and use the code DUMBBELL. That's escapefitness.com using the code DUMBBELL. That's it from me. Please enjoy the rest of this interview.
So Ed, thank you so much for joining us today. I've been reading your book and watching all the fantastic free stuff that you put out on YouTube. And one of the things that you talk about is posture. So I thought before I start, am I sitting in the right position?
Yeah, you know, that's having that spine erect is really one of the secrets to a strong mind-body connection. And, you know, that erect spine, the way that signals to the brain that you're okay, is something I think that we need to look at as fitness professionals in regard to how we're training ourselves and training our clients.
In relation to posture, why is posture important?
Well, when you're thinking about escape your limits, you have to talk about being energy efficient. In other words, you're not spinning your wheels, doing extra miles, doing extra weights, doing extra time, and you're not really being efficient in meeting your goals on a daily 24-hour basis. So when you think about the mind of the spine and you think about that erect spine, the straighter the spine, the less muscles the brain is going to need to recruit to execute the movement that you're doing. And when you're talking about breathing, The number one breathing muscle for a straight spine is a nostril inhale and moving the diaphragm, the abdominal diaphragm, vertically down towards lumbar 4 and 5. And that spine immediately shoots up straight. And the erector spinae muscles will be in exact alignment from the low back up to the cervical spine. So strengthening our inhale is a major tool to straightening that spine. And when the mind sees that straight spine, it's open to going beyond our old comfort zone almost seamlessly.
Right. So what comes first? Sitting in arranging your body so you're sitting in the right position, or starting to breathe, which will help you position your body in the correct position then?
Great question. To me, it begins with first aligning the neuromusculoskeletal system and then adding the breath. So here we are seated in this chair. So if I press my feet down into the earth, like I'm going to engage my quadriceps and stand up, as soon as I press down into the earth, I immediately feel my spine come straight. The shoulder blades roll back and down away from my earlobes, and I relax my eyes and jaw completely. No strain of any of these facial nerves or soft tissue. Then I begin to apply a slow inhale through my nose. And as I inhale through my nose, I can feel my ribs lift away from my hips. And that's the beginning of all of it, getting involved in the belly breathing, getting the oxygen and energy down and into our gut, improving our digestion, elimination, and assimilation of our nutrition, and reducing inflammatory markers in the gut.
Right. You've in some of your interviews, you talk quite a bit about your facial, relaxing your face and your jaw. One of the things I do, I've been doing videos over the last few years and getting pictures, and so when I'm working out, you can see extreme pain on my face. And are you saying then that when you're doing these sort of tough workouts, you don't want to be doing that? That's not going to be sending the right signals to your brain.
Exactly. What I'm saying is trying to be as relaxed as possible as you move through movements that apply a lot of leverage. Number one is you're turning off the lower part of the brain, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, places of the brain that are involved in fight or flight protocols or high levels of adrenaline and cortisol, moving away from that self-preservation part of ourselves, and then using our workout and our body to evolve our hippocampus, our higher part of our brain, so that we can self-correct on the fly. We can stay back in our flow zone and constantly strive for perfection, even in the eye of adversity.
Right. With breathing, from what I've understood from following you, is most of us, the majority of the population, we're doing this sort of upper chest shallow breathing. And apparently by doing that has an impact on some of our nervous system. I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining it, but a couple of questions to you, Ed. What is that correct? Does the majority of people, are we breathing incorrectly in relation to how we're supposed to breathe? And what are some of the issues and consequences of not correctly breathing?
Well, number one, we want to look at the lungs. Okay, number one, there's two of them, and they're huge. If you're just breathing shallow and exchanging air in the top sleeve of your lungs. Now remember the lung physiology. The top of the lungs are imbued with sympathetic nerve endings designed to take a life or not become someone else's dinner. Okay, the energy in the top of our lungs is an emergency system that we have that's all about self-preservation. If we look at the lower lobes of the lungs, they're completely different. They have huge parasympathetic nerve receptors that supply a lot of serotonin and dopamine, oxygen-rich nerve endings, hemoglobin, all the things that we need that are the building blocks of relaxed cellular function. So there's a huge difference in folks that are breathing down into the lower lobes of their lungs and folks that are breathing into the upper lobes of their lungs. As soon as the brain sees us exchanging energy in the top of the lungs, immunity stops, digestion stops, all the energy goes out into our arms and legs, and we turn into a cave person. It's impossible to stop. You want to trigger to your brain that the environment that you're in is non-threatening and safe, and you're in control of your environment from the inside out. and practicing getting that abdominal diaphragm to vertically press down and using suction to draw that fresh breath into the lower lobes of the lungs first is huge to, number one, reduce inflammation and secrete nitric oxide, which is a huge anti-inflammatory molecule. Number two, your spine is going to be straight, so your patterns of movement are going to be efficient. You're not rounding your spine. So in that, just getting that air into the lower lobes of the lungs is a great place for folks to start to begin for themselves and also training their clients. And notice how you feel when you do it. Do you feel a little calmer, even though you can be extremely focused? Or is there that intensity that just simply can't be sustained by the body for more than an extended period of time?
So is it right then that the majority of people are breathing in general? Are we all breathing like that? Are we spending most of our days in the office, or I suppose unless you're a fitness professional actively working, are we all breathing pretty badly at the moment as a society?
It appears that our breathing is extremely dysfunctional in 2021. If we look at folks, there's usually the habitual mouth breathing, which is a very shallow form of oxygenation. It's almost like you're drowning out of water, but you don't feel like you're drowning because there's no resistance between the mouth and the trachea and the top of the lungs. It's a huge airway. So you can get a lot of air in and get a lot out, but how efficient is it in the long run? When you think about being efficient, it begins by getting yourself to a space where you're taking less than 12 breaths a minute. Less than 12 breaths a minute is a wonderful place because you're going to be stimulating an autonomic response of parasympathetic activity from the body up into the brain and mind before you engage in activity, whether it's mental or physical.
Right. What do you think is causes us to go from breathing? I guess at some point we just must have naturally been breathing well. What do you think are some of the things that have caused that? Is it just the lifestyle nowadays where we're probably sitting down a lot, we're not moving, we're in cars, we're in Zooms like this? Do you think that sort of that lifestyle and that seating a lot is affecting how we breathe?
Without a doubt. Here's what I would say is, you want to see some people who are breathing the most efficient of everybody on earth, go down to the paternity ward at the hospital and go look at these babies that were born a few days ago. These people are the best breathers on earth. The DNA is designed for us to breathe through our nose. Every animal on earth breathes through its nose its entire life, unless it's hunting or being hunted. So when you think about just how powerful breathing is, think about breathing. It's on a dual switch. In other words, if you don't want to think about it, your autonomic nervous system and your central nervous system will breathe for you on your own based on your thought. So if you're thinking a loving, happy, open thought, your heart rate will be lower. If you're thinking negativity, stress, anxiety, things aren't going to work out, somehow I don't have a happy gene and everybody else is happy, your breath is going to be rapid and your heart rate is going to be high. So the first thing for folks in today's world is, number one, get that mouth closed and try to introduce to your brain subconsciously the way you were breathing when you were a child. So you're not really learning anything new. You're just remembering that when I was born a nasal breather and a mouth eater, not a mouth eater, a mouth breather, nasal eater. So it's almost like you're remembering as you get control of your breath, you have access to the subconscious part of your brain, and you can begin to remember, hey, that's how I used to do it.
So coming back to that unconscious thing, and there's a couple of questions I've got on this thing, on this part, but are you saying then that and I'm aware of this, you can consciously be aware of your breathing, and then you're like, well, how am I breathing without thinking about it? And then it switches over, and then something obviously takes over. That's called the autonomic nervous system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Which is doing that. Okay. So if you're stressed and you've got stressful thoughts, or you're worried about something, are you saying then that this sort of automatic system that helps you breathe, when it takes over, it's adjusting the sort of tempo of that breathing based on those signals that you're getting? So if you're fearful but you don't realize you're fearful, or if you're stressed, that system's going to probably do your shallow and fast breathing, as opposed to if if it's automatic and it's getting positive signals, it's more of a calmer breathing. Is that sort of regulating you depending on those inputs that are coming into your mind?
It's great. Here's two things right off the bat. Your respiration rate is going to reflect your heart rate. The slower you breathe, the more manageable your heart rate and your heart rate variability score will be, the higher that will be. The faster you breathe, the faster the heart will beat, the higher your blood pressure will be. Your neurochemistry, you'll be a closed channel, you'll be awake, but you'll be fighting with some subconscious memory that's imprinted itself in your past, and your body will store fat, not burn fat, and you're just going to burn glucose. And it's a very, very hard way to get through the day because you lose rhythm during the day. You overheat the system, and then you can't cool it down in time to get a good night's sleep. So thinking about the breathing, just for today, just add breath to the parts of your mind or body that today take your breath away, and begin to help your brain, help you amplify your physiology so you can feel these intruding thoughts and transform them or neutralize them so you don't have the same visceral effect in your body the next time that thought comes up and raids your peace of mind.
So what comes, so are you saying then that, because I guess breath is one of the things you can control. You can't control the speed of your heart consciously.
Right.
Maybe some people can, but it's not like breathing. So are you saying then that you start with that breathing first and get that, train it and get that under control? Is that the starting point, or is it with the things that you're thinking? Do you start with your brain? Where's the sort of beginning of that process, Ed?
Well, everybody's different. But there's two major camps that we come into. There's the mental camp. There's our thinking people that kind of deny the body and the wisdom of the body and all the messages the emotional intelligence brings to the brain. And then there's the body-based people. Like, they got to be in their body, for them to think really well. So there's two camps. There's the heady people and there's the body people. And what we're trying to do is use the breath to hybrid that so that the people that feel comfortable in their head can start to feel good in their body. And the people who feel good in their body then can use that feeling to go up and amplify the positive thoughts that they do have. And the breath is the one thing that's going to touch every system of the body, but it's also going to touch something outside of the body, our minds. One of the great parts about breath control is the first step of controlling our thoughts. In other words, having the ability to discard a thought that comes to our mind that the last time we energized it, it raided our refrigerator and it left us feeling, devalued and not a good person. The idea around breath control is to be able to control the breath, to control the heart rate, to have a better attention state on what you want to occur, and to be able to stay with that longer even when there's resistance. Okay.
So let's stay on that for a moment then, in breath control and thoughts. I heard you talk about, I can't remember what the comparison that you gave, but about this sort of ticker tape of information that's going across. And so if you're not controlling your breathing and you're breathing very shallow, that the bits of information or the sort of size of those thoughts, I use my words, are very, very small, that your mind's processing. But if you're controlling that, then the sort of size and the length of those thoughts that are coming through are longer, so you're able to sort of take in and process more information. Just talk me through that. What's going on? What's happening? How can you use that, particularly as it relates to sort of performance or business?
Oh, Matthew, that's great. And you just hit the nail on the head there. And one of the secrets of transformation and getting out of our own way and always being in the best space in our mind and body. When you think about respiration, I want you to think about, number one, the length, depth, and pace of your inhale and exhale. And you'll notice when you improve the length of the inhale and exhale, in other words, it takes you longer to inhale, and the recoil of that is you'll exhale longer than your inhale in time, less breaths per minute. When you add more depth to your inhale, when you inhale 10% longer than you normally do, and you exhale 10% longer than you normally do, and you slow the pace of your breathing down, it becomes rhythmic. Notice the same thing happens in the brain. So when we're taking many breaths per minute, there's many, many thoughts, and they're scattered, they're ungrounded, and very rarely are they in the present moment. When you start to slow your breath down, there's less thoughts. So you're not having quantity thinking, you're having quality thinking. And there isn't a person who I initially start to work with that isn't overthinking everything. And they've got all these great ideas, but they're having trouble to manifesting them because they don't have the energy to manifest them. So it's all again about quality. And taking less breaths per minute triggers the brain that you're safe. The thinking world is safe and the environment that you're in is non-threatening. In that, your heart rate and blood pressure will be stable. You're going to have a large supply of parasympathetic, oxygen-rich in your bloodstream and nervous system, and in that, the brain will organically, naturally work with the mind, and there'll be higher quality thoughts there. There'll be neuroplasticity there. You'll be able to see where you might have stubbed your toe in the past with an old choice or an old perception, and you'll notice it in one breath, and you'll easily discard it and get back to the task at hand, whether it's a corporate event or whether you're working out in the gym. It's all about quality and getting control of the breath and slowing it down. There'll be less thoughts, but there'll be higher quality thoughts that you'll be bringing to your mind's eye.
What about fear, Ed? At the moment, my guess, if you're running a business or even working one for that matter, it's a crazy world out there, and you sort of get up, and I guess people are fearful for their jobs and fearful for their businesses and fearful for the future. What advice have you got for people to deal with fear? And is this, is fear just one of those emotions where we don't fully understand it, and it's one of these, again, automatic responses that puts us in the wrong state? And are there better ways for people to sort of deal with that fear and anxiety in a productive way?
Fear is a tricky customer, and it's not a stationary target. It can come to us at any time, interfere with our mood, bring us self-sabotage and self-doubt. So how do we look at fear as a teaching tool? Understanding that just get in the game. Failure doesn't exist. There's only lessons. And being a lifelong learner where we can learn a new skill every day when we close our eyes. I've learned something new, and when I learn something new every day, I have the ability to forget something from years ago that has no bearing on who I am today. So I think we have to have a healthy relationship with fear. When we look at great athletes, when we look at great CEOs, they draw the fear closer. They want to know what it's offering them energetically, and then rather than them shrinking, they expand it and they grow from it. So, fear a lot of times is a mental imprint from something in the past that might not have worked out the way you initially saw it and what you're trying to do now. But there's a huge difference between fear and danger. Danger is something you want to remove yourself from immediately. You don't want to be bit by that bear. You don't want to fall off your bike. Danger is real. Fear is more of a cognitive experience taking place in our brain, which is impairing the body to run at high levels of RPM and with a healthy heart rate.
That's interesting. The difference between danger and fear. I kind of like that. I suppose, when you do see danger, you've got a couple of options, either to sort of fight or run away. But I suppose when you haven't got an option to get away, then do you think that being able to, do you think some of the things that you're talking about then allows you to sort of deal with this head on in a very sort of, I suppose, controlled and manageable way? I suppose even if you, I was watching some of the UFC interviews, and I know some of those athletes use breathing a lot when they're in combats, and it seems as though part of the skill is to remain calm and be aware and just see everything that's going on. And I suppose that same situation could be in business. When you're panicking, you're fearful, but you're not really able to sort of take on anything that's thrown at you. What's your thoughts on that, Ed?
There's a lot of people working with higher levels of fear than they need to. Somewhere along the line in life, we've lost our ability to stay in our center, stay in our lane, and just take, when fear comes, number one, the first thing I want to do is slow down my inhale and stabilize my mental activity and identify the fearful intruder. I don't want to run away from it because there's no eyes in the back of my head. I want to turn around back to that fear, and I want to look at it in the eye, and I want to say, fear, what do you want from me? And at that point, I can say, yes, you're right. No, you're wrong. But either way, fear, I have tools, breathing, exercise, meditation, relax. I have tools to remove you from my mind. So you can stay and be nice, or I can eviscerate you and you're going to have to find somebody else to torment, but I know you're not real. I made you real when I wasn't aware. I'm aware now, and I have the ability to transcend you. And it's just having an honest conversation with yourself.
So what brought you to study this field? And I suppose for people listening, what makes you kind of an expert in understanding how this all works?
Well, I grew up on the ocean in the East Coast, USA. I grew up in New Jersey. I was in the water every day. I was an energy junkie, all the water sports. I was in the water from sunrise to sunset, and I had a huge relationship with the ocean. And I was very competitive in the ocean, whether it be surfing, rowing, swimming, sailing, whatever it may be. And over a period of years of disregarding my body's health, I began to break down. I had no flexibility in my body. I was a big muscular guy, but inside I was scared of everything. And there was a lot of pressure on me that I put on myself as a competitor, and I felt I was losing it in my life as I was losing my physical skills. And about 25 years ago, I became involved in breath research and the Eastern arts called pranayama. And pranayama is the science of breath control, prana being energy and yama being control the energy. And when I began to see that the breath control was giving me more efficient workouts in less time, when the breath control was taking me beyond the old triggers emotionally that would throw me into fits or becoming angry or feeling guilty, I began to see that the master key of this mind and body was this breath control thing. And as I began to study it, I became involved with some scientists at Harvard Medical School, and I became involved in some research. And I began to see that no matter what I tried to achieve in my life, when I used breath control, I could achieve it faster with less wear and tear, whether it was less excessive thinking or less miles on my bike or less miles swimming. So I became super efficient in regard to, number one, establishing who I am. I became super flexible just by controlling my breath. And breathing through my nose, all of a sudden my body, my soft tissue began to relax, and there was all sorts of things that I could stretch, and I could use my Western athletic training in concert with breath control in the Eastern arts to kind of hybrid those two to create this career for myself, which is, all about, being responsible for the choices that I make and trying to be the best I possibly can be every single second I have in this body until I die. And when I do identify a thought form or behavior or mood that's beneath who I believe I am, I have the ability to discard it almost immediately. And every day is it's like a new interview. You just go out there and you try to do the best you can. And using the breath is just an amazing tool because, let's face it, breath control leads to great cardiovascular health, and heart disease is the number one killer. When you think about cancer, people aren't dying of muscle cancer. People are dying of organ cancer. So as we strengthen the abdominal diaphragm muscle, as we strengthen our vagus nerve, we remove mucus, phlegm, fat, bacteria, viruses from the internal walls of our gastrointestinal organs, which are susceptible to cancer. And then very rarely will you find yourself ever being sick. So there's so many things that we can apply the breath control to in all facets of the human platforms that we interact in to produce more joy and happiness.
You mentioned on an interview that I was listening to the other day that prior to learning this techniques on breathing, you were repeating previous behaviors, and you were, I think, what you called yourself as a stuck man. What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess I was closed off to the people around me. I thought I was like the shit. I thought I was better than everybody else, and I'm this, I'm a professional athlete, I'm that. And at the end of the day, now that was fear, but I didn't know it was fear at the time. And as I began to really get control of my inner world, I began to see that these fears were camouflaging great strengths that I was born with and gifted with from my parents that I needed to feed from today on to the rest of my life. So, a lot of times, like, we're the last to know that we're stuck. And, you've got all these bills and you're having trouble at work and your relationships aren't working out. And then eventually you go, wow, that could be me. But, initially when we're stressed out, it's never me. It's always everybody else has got it out for me, and things aren't working out. So really dropping into the inner world, dropping into the body. Let's face it, the body is a super intelligent organism, and the breath will really help us unlock more of our story when we need it on the fly.
And you said that was fear then. What was happening? I'm trying to understand it in a slightly different way. So were you just generally fearful about you and your life because you were living it, you just weren't in balance with your mind and body? Is that what you say is going on? Is that what you think?
Yeah, I think I grew up in a very competitive neighborhood, and we would race across the street for a dime. I mean, every single thing we did during our conscious hours was competitive, and I set this in motion in my brain that everything in life was competitive. And there was win at all costs, and sacrifice your body, sacrifice your friends, sacrifice your thoughts. It's all about you. And what I began to notice is that as I got a little older, I began to see that competition is part of life. But you're competing against a part of yourself inside that thinks you can't do it. You're not competing against the guy you see on the starting line every race. And then I began to see that the foundation of healthy competition is compassion. Just the pure fact that you're willing to leave your house, get out on your bike, or get out and whatever it may be in your health and fitness routine, you're compassionately going out there and you're doing the best you can. And just showing up and doing the best you can is part of the human experience.
And what was that shift then? Are you saying then that dialing into this breath work and all the benefits of that allowed you to see the other side? So whilst you were still competitive, you weren't, you was using that to fuel you instead of it holding you back. Is that what
Yeah.
you were able to see through using breath work?
I was able to see that I was really stressed out, and everything I saw in my life through my sensory perception was competitive in nature. And there was like these artificial rungs where everybody would land, in my mind. And I needed to control everyone else for me to feel strong or powerful or to crush you down. It's a very, old male way of being, unless you're in the military and you're in a life and death situation. These types of cerebral activities and physical activities aren't really becoming of a good man, a good father, a good husband, a good business owner. So, eventually I just put my sword and shield down and I said, universe, do what you need to do with me, because, I'm not going to live the rest of my life like this. I think a lot of people can learn from my lessons, and I'm right there to serve others because, I'm a people junkie. I need to be around people. I think, human beings are, we're so much fun. While at the same time, we can be super intense. And I think we all need each other. And this times of separation and pulling the shades down and all of this, it might work overnight, but it's not a lifestyle. We're all in this together. And, nobody gets left behind unless you want to get left behind. So don't get left behind.
You deal with a number of different people, from business people, athletes, and everything in between. What are you seeing people from a high performance perspective making some of these changes and having sort of what's I trying to say? Like big improvements to their performance by making that sort of simple shift.
I think, yes, I think one of the great things is how do we preserve the gifts that we've cultivated up into this day of our life? And how can we naturally and organically have that evolve till tomorrow? And what can we do today to help us be better tomorrow? You know, when I'm working with folks, number one, it begins with physiology. I don't go in to try to, mess with your mind. Whatever you want to think is fine with me. I just try to create an environment where questions can be asked around the normal answers you give yourself about your life. But from a physiological standpoint, I begin in the body. And when we get into the body, we can trust each other. And our emotions will mold together, and then we can push up into the mind. But when you think about people at work and you think about an endurance athlete, we're actually trying to create the same physiology internally, whether you're a triathlete or whether you're working 10 hours at your computer. It's all the same stuff inside, and the awareness just diverts the energy coming out of the body into different protocols. Number one, we want to get control of our breath, and we want to keep our heart rate down. Well, you can do that when you can control your breath. Number two, you want to exhale longer than your inhale in length so that you're constantly using fat as your primary fuel. You want to use fat because fat is an endurance fuel. The body will naturally burn fat as its primary fuel when the brain sees that your exhale is longer than your inhale. That creates safety. Breathing through your nose, you're going to secrete nitric oxide in your brain, which is a huge anti-inflammatory molecule. So you have a greater command over your energy reserves. You know, when you work out and you're breathing through your nose, you can never violate your body. You can't take it beyond what it's not ready to give you. You can hyperventilate through your mouth and cool the body temporarily, and you can go past where you probably should be, but you're going to drain your body's energy reserves, your immune system will weaken, and you could be exposed to some sort of sickness. So it's really about getting involved in this fat metabolism, getting control of the breath, using the endurance qualities of the fat metabolism, saving the glucose for the brain, and then at the end of the day, just, being open. There's only so much control we have over ourselves and our day. And you reach a certain point, we all do, where all bets are off and you're just intuitively making choices from your gut, from your heart. And I think being open as a business owner or employer or employee or athlete is the key to sustainability, because being open means you're curious. It means I'm willing to look outside of my normal comfort zone for ideas, strategies, and concepts to improve me from the inside out.
You mentioned, I'll just go back to your point about fat and exhaling then, just to sort of thrash it out a little bit more. So when you exhale longer than you inhale, and I've tried this in a cold bath actually, and it's kind of helps me. It works. It certainly works. But when you exhale and you keep pushing, what is I guess going back in history, what sort of signals is that doing that causes it to burn fat instead of sugar? What's going on there? In very simple terms, what's happening and why?
Well, I think, look, we're all athletes. Whether you go to the gym, whether you work out, whether you work out at home, whatever, we're all athletes. Just getting out of bed every day is some sort of an athletical quest. So, I think we need to lose some of the labels. But at the end of the day, the exhale is the key to the next level of what you're trying to achieve in your life, whether it be in business or whether it be in athletics. And a lot of us, when we're stressed out, we don't trust our exhale. We become almost addicted to this hyper arousal, and we're almost out of our body all the time. We're just stuck up in our head. Building up CO2 tolerance with a longer exhale is something you could do walking. You can do it at the computer. When you think about you're exhaling as much oxygen as you're inhaling. You're exhaling CO2. So the carbon is creating heat through the nose, and that carbon is incinerating energy, whether it be fat or glucose. There's 2 oxygen molecules that are also there on your exhale that are just as powerful as the O2 that you're going to breathe in the next couple seconds. So what we're trying to do here with this longer exhale is allow the oxygen and carbon dioxide to see each other in the alveoli sacs of our lungs. Most of the time they just pass like 2 ships at a night and they don't really check in with each other. So if you start to exhale longer than you normally do, or you inhale and you hold the breath in for several seconds, oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules will come together and they're going to see that they might be different, but they have a lot in common. And when you become more efficient athletically, you can have a large supply of CO2 in your body, but your heart rate won't go up because your brain is used to it. So trying to extract the oxygen molecules out of the CO2, add it to the O2 of the next inhale, you've got a lot more oxygen and a thinner, translucent alkaline blood moving through your system. And I think a lot of us that are, used to high stress levels, or, we're stressed out a lot, it begins with that longer exhale, helping the brain help you evolve whatever that intruder is in your mind.
And when you say, in terms of how our bodies are evolving, when we're doing that long exhale, is that giving a signal to your body that everything's good, you're calm, and that's the best energy source for that time? And you mentioned the sugar thing, and does that then kick in when something sort of bad happens? You need a real big, quick burst of energy, so it shifts the sort of energy system. So when you're calm and your body thinks you're calm and everything's good, it's using what is a good source to be burning, allowing that glucose and sugars to be used by your brain, which is leaving the best sort of part for the brain. Is that more or less what's going on, and is that how we evolved for that to happen?
Yeah, definitely. In the old days, when we were mouth breathing, there was real danger. Like, there was a bear that came into your camp, and you had to do some quick thinking to save yourself and your family. Nowadays, these intruders, 99% of the time, are just thoughts. But the body thinks these thoughts are happening in real time. It doesn't know the difference. So on that level, the body's actually asleep between a real event and a fantasy event. So I think when we understand the physiology, that when we exhale, this abdominal diaphragm, which vertically presses down on the inhale towards lumbar 4-5, on the exhale, it leaves the abdomen and gently pushes the lower lobes of the lungs up towards your collarbone and gently massages the bottom of the heart. And we know that massage is very important for healthy circulation. And everything, to some degree, is running off of our cardiovascular system. So when you think about heart rates, when you think about fat as your primary fuel, when you think about a straight spine, when you think about the ability to control your thoughts so they don't control you based on who you were yesterday, that little massage of pushing those cardiovascular organs up and the oxygen-rich nerve endings at the lower lobes of the lungs filled with serotonin, so important that we feel good about ourselves. And when we feel good, we think good.
Yeah, that's right. That's very true. What's the connection between the heart and breathing then? Is there a real connection going on there? And is one influence? You obviously you mentioned how breathing can affect the beat of your heart. Is there anything else that's going on between the breath and the heart? And what are some of the sort of pros and cons of that?
So the heart gets all of its energy, its potential to pump blood, from the strength of your inhale and the muscles of inhale, which are your diaphragm, your internal intercostals, and your scalenes, and the muscles of exhale, which are your rectus abdominis, your obliques, and your transverse abdominis. These are the primary inhale and exhale muscles that serve the heart, and the heart serves for the brain. The brain is in charge. There's really no getting around the brain, and as much as it's a solution, it's also part of the problem. So when we think about breathing, what I want to do, like when I work out with folks, when I train them, the first thing we do is we introduce breath control to show the brain that the heart gets its energy from the respiratory system. So we warm up the respiratory system first, the cardiovascular system second, and the neuromuscular skeletal system last. So it happens from the inside out. Traditional training with little or no breath control, it's the exact opposite. Everything happens from the outside in. We move the body, lactic acid builds up, CO2 starts to build. The amygdala of the brain sees that and says, wait a second, we can't handle this CO2, so the heart has to beat faster. And then to make the heart beat faster, you have to breathe faster too. So you can rewire your brain to go to your breath first as soon as you see a stressor or you feel your heart rate is up too high. So you go to the breath first to control your heart rate, and then you move your body last. Everything in earth happens from the inside out. There's a seed in the ground, it gets sun and water, and it comes out. There isn't anything on earth growing from the outside in. That's dangerous. So trying to get into our deeper energy sources first, use the breath control to support a healthy heart rate, healthy heart, and raise your heart rate variability score sky high.
So in a practical workout then, what would that sort of look like, starting with the breath? What would you do if you was working with someone? Would you just get them to start off with breathing exercises then?
So the first thing we would do is we'd set the table where we have a good physical alignment, where the spine is straight, where the belly and spine can receive the diaphragm on the inhale, and we have the shoulder blades back and down, the face relaxed on the exhale. So it begins with a slow motion inhale and exhale longer than your inhale. And you want to set off this parasympathetic activity so you're almost cooling your fire before you heat it up for the meat of your workout. And then you inhale and you hold the breath in. So say you inhale for a count of 5. Hold the breath in for 5, exhale for a count of 10. Do that for several minutes. And then you want to reverse that. Inhale, hold 5, exhale 5, and then hold out for 5. So basic box breathing. So you're creating this heat inside your body. It starts out with a longer exhale. Then there's an internal retention period. Then there's an external retention period. The big benefactors about this is when you hold the breath in, when you do it correctly. I'm not saying hold the breath in, your face turns purple. I'm not recommending depriving your brain of oxygen. That's not what I'm all about. I'm about less is more. When you hold the breath in, you've created more pressure for a longer exhale, which is huge. When you hold the breath out, you're creating more suction for a longer inhale, because the inhale and exhale pull on each other like a seesaw. So when you want a client to improve their inhale, have them hold the breath out. When you want a client to improve their exhale, have them hold the breath in, and the body will do it organically. It takes very little willpower. And that's just a nice place to get started. You know, there's slower breathing, there's fast breathing through your nose, there's breathing in your nose and your mouth together. There's as many ways to breathe as there is stars in the sky. And most of the folks on your podcast, you know, they're exciting people. You know, they like to push the edges. They want to see what they can do with their life. And the breath is there to help them achieve their goals with less mental and physical wear and tear.
Right. So that's where you start. How long are you in a workout? How long are you spending on that initial breathing exercise roughly?
Well, the first time I work with them, we'll do that stationary. But the next time we work with them, that's brought right into the weights. It's brought right into the yoga. any type of cardio, the whole experience is about controlling the breath in stressful situations that are exercise induced and learning how to control your mind through controlling your heart rate in these breath control protocols. So everything that you do in your fitness training, racing routines can all be used with breath control to enhance what you're doing, remove injury from what you're doing, remove wear and tear, and integrate your gains almost overnight.
So do you think that it's one of the things that happens in my workout from time to time? And if I'm, say for example, I'm doing so on the rowing machine, I can kind of push, my body seems to go really well beyond my breathing. And when I get off it, there's this catch up where I'm like, shit, I can't breathe anymore. So is that down to me just not breathing correctly and sort of having my whole body and everything connected with that movement? Because it certainly seems as though something's not quite balanced, because it doesn't happen all the time. But I think sometimes I get to a stage and I've pushed myself to the limit and then I panic a little bit and I can't breathe. So is that I'm not controlling it? What do you think?
Well, here's what I would say about that, is that one of the big shortfalls I see in a lot of athletic classes and in one-on-ones is there's not enough warm-up and there's not enough cool-down. You know, it's just get in there and give it all you got and, you know, be hell or high water, this is how I'm going to do. But preparation is the key. So when you hop on that rowing machine, the first thing we want to do is we want to warm up those respiratory muscles in the cardiovascular system, and we want to save our neuromuscular skeletal system, save the strength of our muscles for the intense interval training or whatever piece you're dying to do. So one of the ways that you can really warm your lungs up is start out with an interval of breath retentions. So you're rowing along, you know, you're just getting yourself into alignment, finding your rhythm, and after a minute, when the clock gets to 1 minute and 1 second, you inhale and you hold the breath in for 4 strokes. And then you row the remaining 50 seconds or 45 seconds. Then when you get to 60 seconds again, you inhale, you hold the breath in for 5 strokes. And then you take that 45 seconds off. And then you inhale, you hold in for 6 strokes. And then you row for another 40 seconds. And then inhale, hold for 7 strokes. And you want to expand your lung tissue with these internal retentions. You're going to get a huge sweat right off the bat. But again, you're warming up the respiratory system first, the cardiovascular system second, and then you're going to use your thighs, your rotators, your glutes, your low back, recruit your lats, all the things you're doing for rowing. So using some sort of internal breath hold ladder before you begin the meat of your workout, number one, your heart rate won't go as high and it'll reset faster coming out of that. One of the ways that you can really amplify your cool down period is as soon as you get off the rower, stop mouth breathing, force yourself to breathe through your nose. Now the first couple breaths, you might have to breathe really fast through your nose, just like just a little rabbit breath in and out through the nose as fast as you can. That'll start getting your cortisol levels down. And then begin to see if you can breathe a little slower through your nose and then a little slower through your nose. And this might take like 45 seconds. And then after that, you want to alternate nostril breathe. You want to breathe through one nasal channel at a time when your heart rate's sky high. This opens the nasal turbinates of each nasal channel and the sinuses. It activates both prefrontal cortexes and the corpus callosum that separates these two most conscious parts of our brain, and it'll put you in a flow state, and your heart rate's going to be high. So when you start to breathe through one nose channel at a time, your brain is still going to think you're rowing. You're going to receive the benefits of that rowing, but you're not going to get any more wear and tear. So that will lead you into the close of your workout, which should be something meditative or reflective or resting or looking to integrate.
Why when you say you're breathing through your nose, does it release cortisol and it doesn't within your mouth? What's happening there then?
Well, the right nasal channel on the inhale and the left nasal channel on the exhale have sympathetic nerve endings. In other words, they have cortisol in there. Your left nostril on the inhale and your right nostril on the exhale have serotonin receptors or parasympathetic nerve endings. So when you're going into your workout, noticing which nasal channel is more efficient. So all day long, these nostrils will switch every couple hours in regard to which one is going to be more efficient. And notice what it's like when you go into the gym, when your right nostril is more efficient than your left. And notice your workouts when you go into the gym when your left nostril is more open than your right. And this will help you have more tools in your health, wellness, performance, business toolbox to help the brain help you.
All right. So the big takeaway is you're not really meant to breathe through your mouth unless it's an emergency. And outside of that, you want to be breathing as much as you can through your nose, because there's a bunch of great things that will happen as a result of that. Yeah.
Well, I think the idea for all of us is longevity, and live our dream, go for it, push it as far as you can. But at the end of the day, we all want to live a long life. And when we can look at all the debilitating effects of mouth breathing, when you're hyperventilating through your mouth and your face is straining, you are not creating health for yourself. That is never going to, pain is never going to create pleasure. Okay, you have to be able to read the signals. And the idea is to be in the eye of the storm in your workout routines. Notice when you hit the wall of the storm and you start to spin, and you take a breath and you go back to that still silent place in the middle of those walls. And you never leave the center for a short-term goal. You want the center to expand out wider on its own as you begin to mentally get more control of your physiology, which leads to a greater command of your psychology.
Right. You mentioned nitric oxide earlier, and that's also a result of nose breathing. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no nitric oxide available to the brain or the body when we breathe through the mouth. Right. So thinking about closing the mouth and this amazing molecule, it's one of the primary drivers of stalling aging in the brain, so we don't overheat the brain. And you'll probably, as you age, you won't have any of those senior diseases in the brain that can't be reversed. You're also going to take care of your body. Everything's about the energy, the fire, your motor. Where's your motor? Your motor is in your gut. The capacity to do things. It takes a boatload of energy for us to be us. So minding your nutrition, minding your feelings, keeping a good eye on your moods, and having your gut with the least amount of mucus, phlegm, and fats inside the internal walls of our organs.
And in order to do that, then you need to have that deep diaphragmatic. Is that how you pronounce? Is it called diaphragmatic? Yeah. Is that the word? In order to prevent that happening, you've got to be breathing and massaging the diaphragm to prevent that buildup. Is that correct?
I don't want you to breathe through your mouth at all. I want you to breathe through your nose as slowly as you possibly can for the rest of your life, every spare moment you have for the rest of your life. When you're in intense exercise, do not breathe through your mouth. Breathe fast through your nose for 2 or 3 rounds. This will reset your cortisol levels. It'll drop your CO2 levels, and you'll be able to reestablish strong motor patterns in your lower body, which plays such a huge role to how the brain's interacting with this. So don't mouth breathe. Breathe fast through your nose, and then try to breathe slower and slower and slower rather than going faster, faster, and faster. And again, don't judge your workout in the middle of the workout. Judge your workout by how you feel 4 or 5 hours later. You want to feel super energized, but zen. Like you're insulated from the part of yourself that has anything wrong with you or the world. And it's just really about honoring our energy. And it takes a lot of energy and not wasting any energy. Don't overthink. Don't over emote. You already have more skills than you possibly can even imagine. Feed those and grow from the inside out.
Right. You talk about this flow state and how, 2 things. How do you get into that, and what if you can get into that, what are the benefits of being in that flow state, and whether it's in your workout or just generally throughout life?
So being in a flow state is one of the most optimal feelings of being in a human body. And whether it's in an athletic event or whether you're training or whether you're at work, creating the neurochemistry for flow, you'll notice there is a complete absence of any fear, that you are completely empowered and focused on the task at hand without any thread that it might not work out. You'll notice that time dilates. So if you're an endurance athlete, you might notice that you didn't notice that the last time you checked your watch was an hour and a half ago, and you can't believe that amount of time has gone by. Or distance has dilated, and you've gone 10 miles, but you only thought you went 5. These are some of the qualities that we see with flow. Now, you can't have flow as like, I hope it happens. You want to be able to make it happen. How can you make it happen? Very simple way to do it. Practice getting your heart rate up. Okay, breath control, heart rate up, and then bring your heart rate down with alternate nostril breathing. This is a tool that will bring you into a flow state, a light flow state, every single time you do it. A flow state is characterized as a fearless state of human power. There's 5 neurochemicals present in flow that are only present in the brain when we're in this state of awareness. Number 1 is norepinephrine. It is a neurochemical that puts that focus on the task at hand, and you're completely locked in on it without any distractions. Number 2 is endorphins. It's the body's painkiller, and you can break through a tremendous amount of thought pain or physical pain when these endorphins are present. Number 3 is serotonin. Serotonin allows you to feel good. Dopamine is another feel-good receptor in the brain, moving through the brain. And the last is anandamide. And anandamide is a cross-lateral molecule that allows the right prefrontal cortex to talk to the left and the left prefrontal cortex to talk to the right. It enlivens the corpus callosum, which is a series of matted nerves that separates the 2 prefrontal cortexes for this conversation to take place. So thoughts are being felt, which is huge. And in that, you'll use whole brain messages rather than short, bumpy, jumpy messages. And you're completely locked in, one step at a time, on exactly what you want to achieve, and there is no resistance to you meeting your goal. That is flow neurochemistry, and it can be available to all of us with simple breath control.
Right. So you got this performance enhancing chemicals that you can create yourself by just breathing. And what about getting, like, if you want to substitute drinking tequila or something like that, can you get I was, when I was researching, I was really researching about this sort of hallucinogenic breathing that can kind of give you that also sort of relaxed and high state. Tell me a bit about that. Is that something you've done, or how do you create that?
Yeah, I have done it, and it's a very, very transformational technique where you lie down on your back and you'll hyperventilate on your back, in and out through your mouth for 15, 20 minutes. And you'll over-oxygenate yourself to some degree, and the brain just lights up. And it's a wonderful tool for recovery. It's a wonderful tool for getting to know ourselves better. It needs to be mentored correctly. This is not anything to fool around. So if you want to activate this, it's fine. Okay, it's going to take you 20 or 30 minutes of hyperventilating through your mouth to really open your mind wider than it's ever been. But you want to make sure you take 3 or 4 hours to really integrate that and eat and journal and bring that down and have someone there with you that you can share your story with. So it's a powerful tool. It can be done maybe a couple times a year, but for the most part, it's more about everything we're doing. What can I integrate out of my workouts today? What can I integrate today at my workplace that's going to make me more self-aware tomorrow? So it's really easy to wind us up, but what's challenging is for us to unwind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I got one of these Aura rings for Christmas, and it was quite scary actually. I'm almost thinking of not wearing it for a while because my sleep seems to be terrible. What advice have you got for two things? One is to get yourself from nicely relaxed into a nice sleep, and then one of the things I seem to have a habit of doing is waking up sort of 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I start thinking and making notes and stuff like that. What can I do to get me back into that sleep without having this sort of monkey brain thing going on?
So number one, the body responds to what has happened previously. So if we overheat the system during the day, if the heart rate's been too high, there's been many, many thoughts, a lot of stress, there isn't enough time for the body to cool down enough, for the brain to feel safe enough, for us to go in to these deeper delta waves and stay in these deeper delta waves. The body only makes melatonin, which is the primary 2. So at 2 o'clock when most people wake up, the reason why they wake up is twofold. Number one, at that point, you'll find that your right nostril is more efficient than your left. You're not getting enough parasympathetic activity. And then number 2 is there's no serotonin on reserve to get us back into a relaxed state. So first of all, to get asleep, the technique is inhale, hold the breath for 2 count, exhale, hold the breath out for 2 count. Just lie down in your bed or sit on the edge of your bed and just inhale, hold 2, exhale, hold 2. That'll set a parasympathetic response, and your mental intention is, I would prefer to have a great night's sleep. When you wake up in the middle of the night, all you need is parasympathetic activity to fall back asleep. And the technique I'm going to teach you, you'll fall back asleep in less than 10 breaths. So all we want to bring to the moment is parasympathetic activity. So the way we're going to do this is, I'll take my left hand, I'll take my right hand, and I'll close off my right nostril. And I'll inhale slowly up my left nostril. I'll close off the left, and I'll exhale slowly out the right. Close off the right, open the left again. Slow motion inhale up the left nasal channel. Close off, release, exhale right. That's the technique. Close off the right, open the left. Close the left, exhale right. When we look at the physiology of the nostrils and the autonomic nervous system, when you inhale left and exhale right only, this is an autonomic response that is simply parasympathetic. You're going to raise serotonin levels. You're going to bring down cortisol levels. And within 10 breaths, you'll fall back asleep, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to try that tonight, and I'm going to report back on how I got on, because if that works, that'll be a big benefit to me. I've got a couple of other questions, including how you can use breathing in the current climate with COVID. But just before I do that, I wanted to sort of give you the opportunity to share with people how they can learn a lot more about this and breathing techniques and your workshops and your course. Can you sort of let people know how they can take this podcast to another level if they're interested, Ed?
Yeah, so I have a website, www.edharrold.com. That's Harrold with 2 R's. Or you can look me up under Go Be Great. That is my tagline on my website. I have various different educational programs that can be done at your own pace online to introduce breath to you, whether you're in the corporate world or whether you're in the athletic world. These are the 2 predominant markets that I work in. So we have these video learnings. For the athletes out there, I would say the 15-hour Breath is Medicine fitness program is a great place to start. For the corporate people, I have a 25-hour training program. It's a foundational program off my second book, Body, Mind, Business, the business of being within. And I use my athletic physiology and psychology and wedge it right into the corporate model. And it's designed just to blow everybody out of the water and be the best you possibly can be at work. So I have a few books that I've authored that I think you might like. And there's all sorts of stuff on the website that's just free. And you can go in there and it's all chock filled with information I know is going to help you live a more joyful, happy, stress-free life.
Fantastic. I'd recommend the books as well, and the videos, because I on YouTube there's some fantastic videos for different types of breathing. And I was going to ask you that one actually. I didn't ask it earlier, but one of the other things, and this is selfishly questions to me, but I'm sure other people experience a similar situation. But if you hit one of those spots in the afternoon, maybe you've been traveling a lot, different time zones, or if you're driving and you get to that stage where you sort of start getting tired, and it's that type of tired where you're almost kind of slapping yourself and you can't wake up. Is there anything you can do with breathing when you need to sort of, instead of having a shot of espresso, you need something to wake you up? Is there any breathing that you can do to sort of energize yourself and wake your body up again then?
Yeah, so one of the simple things we can do in the afternoon when the sun is dropping and the moon is coming up, we can create more heat internally in our body to create homeostasis with the external environment where it's becoming colder and there's less light. So one of the ways that we can do this is we can take the inhale and we can break it into smaller. Remember, the inhale is sympathetic. The inhale is a cortisol event. It brings the heart rate up slightly. So one of the things you can do if you need a hit of energy in the afternoon is just in your own way, breathing through your nose, inhale 50% of your capacity and pause. Now, inhale the remaining 50% into your lungs and hold the breath in. Now, flex your biceps, squeeze your pecs, engage your thighs, your glutes, your calves, press down into the earth, isometrically contract all your muscles. And when it becomes uncomfortable and there's too much CO2, exhale through your nose slowly. And then repeat. Inhale 50%, pause. Inhale the remaining 50%, hold in, and isometrically contract as many muscles as your brain can feel, starting with the superficial muscles, then the intermediate layer, and then try to engage your skeletal muscles. Then exhale through your nose. And that little bit of energy will give you all four forms of self-care in the same second. Number one, cardio. Your heart rate's going to go up because you held the breath in. Number two, you're isometrically contracting your muscles, you're toning muscles and building simple strength. Number three, you're creating flexibility on the muscles that aren't being contracted. And number four, mindfulness or meditation. Every time you control your breath and hold your breath, notice you're paying attention. You're in the present moment, and that's where the action is.
So COVID-19 and breathing, what should we be doing that we're not, I suppose, put us in a better position to deal with what's going on in the world today?
So the mask makes it more difficult to breathe. We're already dysfunctional breathers globally. Two things against us already. So, number one is preparing yourself to breathe with the mask on before you put the mask on. So there's things that you can do at home to open up your respiratory system and get heat going so that when you put the mask on, you're not going to get that CO2 buildup by the mask being around on the exhale. So you might want to breathe fast, in and out, up and down, inhale up, exhale down, like 25 rounds. That's going to open up your lungs. It's going to open up your lymphatic system and your ribs. It's going to get things flowing from the inside out. Learning how to breathe with the mask, look, even if you don't have a mask, we're all working with a mask to some degree. In other words, I can't go out and run a 4-minute mile. It's like I have a mask on. I have an asthmatic attack. The idea here is to work on basic fundamental breathing techniques so that when you do have the mask on for an extended period of time, you're not going to have the debilitating effects that we know are occurring over time because the mask is on restricting your airway. So think about learning how to breathe slowly. Think about how to breathe quickly through your nose when you need to bring your heart rate down quickly. Try not to exhale through your mouth. The mask is just making it more difficult for us. So again, preparation, warming the respiratory system up before you put the mask on, and then learning how to use the mask in a healthy way mentally and changing the mask daily so you don't have a buildup of mucus and phlegm that's draining out from the mask around your nostrils.
Was that, am I correct in understanding that if, say, for example, you're not wearing a mask and you're in contact with someone, is there a difference that if in terms of you being able to deal with a virus by nose breathing, and what happens if it should shoot up your nose as opposed to your mouth?
There is an easier chance for disease when you're mouth breathing because there's no filtration system, and that unfiltered air goes right into your lungs, and then the party's over. So when you breathe through your nose, nature's already given us a filtration system to keep airborne pollutants out. And what gets in is going to be something that is going to be modulated when you learn how to breathe through your nose and your throat at the same time. And that's an old yoga technique called the Ujjayi breath, or the ocean sounding breath. So you're creating heat in your throat so the pollutants don't get down into your lungs. For most folks, there's very little risk of you getting sick from the COVID as long as you're active. You have a reasonable, not perfect diet, but as long as your inflammatory markers are low, chances are you won't be a host for this disease.
Right, and good breathing is helping you to keep those inflammatory markers low. Yeah,
that's the exhale. So just staying with the exhale and the body releasing that carbon. Carbon's the building block of this machine. So that carbon is the heat that burns waste and toxicity from every organ, cell, muscle, tendon, wherever it may be. So the exhale is more than just the exhale. It's designed to strengthen your immunity.
I wasn't aware of that.
Well, when you think about our immune system, 70% of our immune system comes from our gut. When you think about the diaphragm muscle and breathing, it acts like a plunger, down and up, down and up, down and up, down and up. And in that, there's less mucus, phlegm, and fat in our gastrointestinal organs, and they operate at a very high level. There's a big fire in your gut, but you have a resting heart rate and calm thoughts. That's how we strengthen our immunity.
So, final question then, Ed. I could talk to you for a long time. It's taken me a while to sort of latch on to the principles, but I'm starting to understand it. And it's amazing how something just like breathing, which I guess we do all our life, has such an impact in ways that you wouldn't think it. It's as I said, it's connected. Actually, before I say that last question, the vagus nerve. This is something you talk about a lot. What is it, and why is that important as well?
So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It's a series of 12 nerves that are outside the forebrain area. It's the 10th cranial nerve. It has two heads that come down and intervene between C5 and C6, pierce the heart and lungs and diaphragm, and then have little tentacles that go into every organ of the abdomen except for our adrenal glands. And creating vagal tone, more resiliency, we have more energy, but it's calm energy. Learning how to breathe and lengthening that exhale triggers the vagus nerve to strengthen in its electrical current. So it removes toxicity. It stalls aging. It allows our blood to be alkaline. It does many, many things well. So what I want folks to get out of this is, number one, you need energy. Where does that energy come from? It comes from strengthening your diaphragm muscle. And then you need resiliency and calm. Where does that come from? It comes from your vagus nerve. And when you can amplify your vagus nerve and amplify your diaphragm, you have a huge motor, but it's calm.
So last question, and this really is the last one now, Ed. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and made it possible. What would be a memorable example of escaping your personal limits?
Oh, my goodness. In 1995, I was in a 22.5-mile professional swim. And there was 28 people in the race. The water was 58 degrees. It was in the ocean in the bay. And there's some really super athletes in this event. And the first 8 miles of the event, everything was fine. You know, I had this thing set up in my head, how I wanted this to play out. I visualized it. And the first 8 miles, everything was great. And then around about the 9 mile mark, I couldn't keep anything down. I was in mild hypothermia. I really couldn't control my brain. And between mile 8 and mile 14, I literally just wanted to stop. I couldn't take one more stroke. In fact, my stroke rate went down to like 55 strokes a minute. I was in bad shape. I thought for sure there was no way that I was ever going to complete this 22.5 mile swim. And then around mile 14, something happened inside my body that I can only describe, that I felt this huge warm energy come up from my pelvic bowl, and it moved up my spine into my brain, and I was invincible. And from mile 14 to 22.5, I swam the fastest I ever swam in my life. I was swimming about 90, 100 strokes a minute, and I came in 14th out of 28th. But if you asked me in the middle of that race, was I going to finish that race? There was no way on earth. The last thing I wanted to do was swim anymore. So just keep hanging in there with it and keep pushing yourself. Don't quit. Stay connected to your breath. There's more energy inside us than I could describe to anyone out there. We're like a nuclear power plant, and most of us censor these feelings. We want to bring these feelings up into the brain and light that brain up, light that heart of yours up, because you really are invincible.
Fantastic. Well, Ed, thank you so much for your fantastic information in terms of breathing. Thanks for all the work you do on YouTube. I recommend people check that out. And best wishes in what you and your business are doing in the future. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. You're the greatest, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you.
Peace.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.